That morning, when Fatima Hussein unlocked the glass door of Hodan Market at 8 a.m., as she did every Saturday, she anticipated nothing more than the usual rhythm of her week. The air was crisp, carrying the promise of a busy day ahead in her Minneapolis neighborhood. She could never have imagined that by afternoon, her small grocery store would be transformed from a simple place of commerce into a powerful symbol, its story etched permanently into the memory of the community. Her own journey from the turmoil of Somalia to this quiet American street was a tapestry woven with threads of hope and profound loss. She had arrived with her family a decade prior, carrying little but a fierce determination to build a life of peace, far from the shadows of civil war. Hodan Market was the fruit of that determination, a decade of saving, of working double shifts, of dreaming. It was more than a business, it was a sanctuary. For the East African immigrants in the area, it was a cherished taste of home, with its shelves stocked with fragrant spices, bags of teff flour, and the ever-present aroma of sweet Somali tea brewing in the back. For the wider neighborhood, it was a reliable source of fresh produce, a place where Fatima knew everyone by name, and her warm, equitable smile was as much a staple as the milk and bread she sold. Life, with all its challenges, had found a steady, predictable cadence, and then the bell on the door chimed. The three young men who entered were not regulars. At first, they seemed like any other customers, ambling past the displays of fruits and vegetables. But a tension entered the air with them, a subtle shift in atmosphere that made the hairs on Fatima's arm prickle. Her instincts, honed by years of navigating both a war-torn country and the complexities of a new life, whispered that something was wrong. Her eyes discreetly followed them as she rearranged bananas on the counter. One of them paused by a shelf of canned goods, his hand hovering not to select an item, but to trace the edge of the metal shelf. It was then that Fatima's gaze locked onto the distinct hate symbol, tattooed on his forearm. Her heart, for a single suspended beat, seemed to stop. The shocking crack of metal on linoleum shattered the store's quiet hum. The young man hadn't chosen a can. He had gripped the entire shelf, and with a violent grunt, sent it crashing to the floor. The sound was a starting pistol. The other two men sprang into action, a coordinated storm of destruction. "Go back to your country," one of them snarled, his voice dripping with venom, as he upended another display. This wasn't a robbery. It was a pure, unadulterated hate crime, an assault not on property, but on her very existence. Fatima stood frozen behind the counter, her mind scrambling to process the surreal nightmare. Her hand fumbled for the phone, but before she could reach it, a powerful shove sent her stumbling backward. She lost her balance, landing hard on the floor amidst scattered boxes and broken jars. The physical impact was jarring, but it was the verbal assault that followed, the hateful slurs spat down at her from a contorted face that carved a far deeper wound. Lying there, surrounded by the wreckage of the world she had painstakingly built, the world where she had raised her children and earned her place, she felt a helplessness more acute than anything she had experienced, even in Somalia. This was a violation of her spirit, a denial of her humanity. She could only shield her head and wait, prayers forming silent, desperate words on her lips. The rampage ended as abruptly as it began, the perpetrators fleeing at the sound of approaching sirens. Left in the sudden, eerie quiet, Fatima sat up slowly, surrounded by the ruins of her livelihood. A sharp pain shot through her back, but it was dwarfed by the heavy, suffocating weight of despair in her chest. The first person to step through the broken door was Mr. Gable, the elderly baker from across the street, his face a mask of horror and disbelief. Seeing her world reflected in his shocked eyes made the devastation feel absolute. Yet, the hardest part facing her community, grappling with the trauma, and finding a way forward, was still to come. Sunlight streamed through the now bare window frame, glinting off thousands of grains of rice, scattered like fallen stars across the floor. Fatima took a deep, shaky breath, unknowingly preparing for the greatest test of her life. The police officers who arrived were efficient, but detached. They took notes, snapped pictures, and asked their clinical questions. Fatima answered mechanically, her mind numb. The recurring question, "Why me?" echoing in the hollow spaces between their words. What had she done in 10 years of serving her neighbors, paying her taxes, sending her children to school, to deserve such venom? After they left, yellow tape was strung across the doorway, marking the store as a crime scene. Standing alone in the center of the chaos, Fatima became aware of a small crowd gathering outside. She saw their pity, their whispered words. She distinctly heard someone say, "That poor woman." The phrase poor stung more than the shove had. She had been strong, independent, a pillar. Now in their eyes, she was reduced to a victim. The night that followed was long and sleepless. She stayed in the store, sitting on a stool, surrounded by the ghosts of the day's violence. Every creak of the building, every passing car, sent a fresh jolt of fear through her. Dawn was just breaking when a tentative knock on the door made her jump. Peering out, she saw Maria, her elderly Latina neighbor from down the block, holding a bucket of cleaning supplies and a determined look. Without a word, Maria ducked under the tape and walked in. She bent down, picked up a can of tomatoes, and placed it gently on the counter. Then she turned and looked at Fatima. Her eyes filled, not with pity, but with resolve. Behind her, a few more neighbors trickled in, each carrying mops, brooms, or boxes. One of them, a young man named David, who lived above the hardware store, spoke softly. "Fatima, we're with you. This is our neighborhood's heart, too." In that moment, something inside Fatima shifted. The ice around her heart began to melt, and the tears that came were not of fear, but of overwhelming gratitude. That day, a spontaneous cleaning brigade materialized. Teenagers helped right the heavy shelving units. Women swept up glass and sorted through salvageable goods, and older residents brewed coffee and offered quiet words of encouragement. The story spread beyond the block. A social media fundraiser was launched, and donations poured in, not just from the immediate community, but from across the city. The outpouring of support was staggering, a tidal wave of goodwill against the trickle of hate. Within a week, the physical scars of the attack were healed. New shelves stood straight. A pristine pane of glass replaced the broken one, and the floors shone. But the internal scar, the deep-seated fear, remained for Fatima. The idea of reopening, of hearing that doorbell chime and not flinch, felt insurmountable. It was then that the neighborhood unveiled its masterstroke. A volunteer patrol, a rotating schedule was created, where different people would simply spend time in the store each day, not as security guards, but as friends. Their presence, a silent shield, and a powerful statement of solidarity. This simple act of companionship was the key that unlocked Fatima's courage. The day Hodan Market reopened, a line stretched down the sidewalk. Customers came not just to buy groceries, but to hug Fatima, to share a cup of tea, to reaffirm their connection. The market had been reborn as something greater than itself, a living monument to community resilience. The attackers had sought to sow division. Instead, they had forged an unbreakable bond. Empowered, Fatima reached out to other small business owners in the area, forming a network of mutual support. Months later, when one of the assailants was caught and faced trial, Fatima stood in the courtroom. She spoke not only of the fear and the pain she had endured, but more powerfully, of the incredible wave of love and support that had risen in response. She spoke for every immigrant, who had ever felt invisible or threatened. The perpetrator was convicted, but for Fatima, true justice had already been served on the floor of her store, surrounded by her neighbors armed with mops and kindness. Hodan Market's story became a local legend, a testament to the fact that light can indeed drown out darkness. Fatima Hussein was no longer seen as a victim, but as a leader, a quiet force of nature. The woman who unlocked the door that Saturday morning was the same woman who stood tall in the aftermath, but she was now filled with a profound, unshakable belief in the goodness of people. The bell on the door now chimed, not as a warning, but as a welcome, a continuous reminder that even in the face of pure hatred, a community's love can rebuild, restore, and make you whole again. The story of Hodan Market is a permanent fixture in the neighborhood, a lesson passed down that an act of hate can never extinguish the power of collective hope and the enduring strength of the human spirit.